Welcome back, Mighty Vandals, to Tubs at the Club, your University of Idaho affiliate on the Big Sky Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brian Marceau, joined as always by full-time producer, part-time, I'm not allowed to say it anymore, Martin. How's it going in Moscow?
It's going great. It's finally had to turn the heat on in Moscow. I am excited. It's another, after 2 weeks, weekend off of Vandal football. I am happy to have it back.
I feel like we needed that week off. By the way, Tubs of the Club presented by Snake River Stampede Canadian Whiskey. We're joined today. We got a new co-host. First time Tubs co-host, I believe, Montana Parlay. But you've been doing stuff with the Big Sky Podcast Network forever. Used to be regular on the Montana Mints podcast, Big Sky, Big Takes. And currently you got a new show you'll tell us about, Montana Parlay. How's it going?
Pretty good, though. I'd be better if I had some of that whiskey you just mentioned.
Well, you know, if you're going to bring it up, we might as well hit it already. Snake River Stampede Canadian Whiskey, one of the best buys in Idaho State liquor stores, $25.95 for a fifth of the standard. Or if you're celebrating a big win, like, hey, if Idaho wins this weekend against Montana State, I'm pouring the 1915 small batch. Both are double barrel finished. If you haven't given Snake River a shot, dude, you need to absolutely this week. But look, Dallas is on the shelf. So Montana Parlay has been, he's been kind of the eyes and ears for us about Montana State, especially with Lions. But Jake, glad to have you here. You want to take 1 second to go over the Saturday show you have that everyone needs to be watching before they place their bets?
Yeah, me and Colby from Weber State Weekly, we put on a little, it's a little off the cuff because of how the lines come out. If you follow FCS sports betting, lines do come out late, not always uniform. Every state's a little different. Offshore books used to be more dependable. They aren't anymore. So we're actually moving that shore to 12:15 Central Time, 11:15 Rock Mountain Time, and 10:15 Pacific. So if you like to bet on FCS, tune in. We're on the FCS Fans Nation YouTube channel. 1AA parlays. Just check out Montana Parlay on Twitter or Colby and Weber State Weekly, and you'll find the show. That's Saturdays, 12:15 Central. If you like money, that is.
Exactly, dude. So, okay, with that said, dude, we have another huge game in Moscow, which we can confirm on Tubs at the Club. This is essentially a back-to-back sellout in Moscow. As of today, which is Wednesday, October 25th, there are fewer than 100 tickets left available for the general public. You have to call the ticket office if you want to get one of those. There's a handful that are still left for students and parents to claim because it's student parent weekend. So, hey, if you don't have a ticket, parents, and you have a student, your student can buy you a parent ticket. But tickets are going to be hard to come by. If you want them, call the ticket office immediately in the morning. First back-to-back sellouts in the Kiwi Dome Montana Parlay since I have no idea. And that's not a joke. I truly have no idea when the last time Idaho sold out back-to-back games. So look, we're hosting Idaho, number 9 Idaho, hosting number 2 Montana State. Idaho coming off a loss. Montana State's only loss was week 2, 20-16 at number 1 South Dakota State, a game Montana State definitely could have won. Other than that, last week against Sacramento State was kind of the only non-shitty team Montana State had played other than South Dakota State. But look, if we look at the tail of the tape for Montana State, honestly, since Brent Vegan has taken over post-COVID, and look, he took over a very well-running program from Jeff Choate. So I don't want to pretend like things haven't been going well there for a while. But look, Brent Vegan came over from Wyoming. His background, he's North Dakota State centric with his route to Montana State. He was a tight end at North Dakota State from 93 to 97. Immediately in 98 became an NDSU GA. And from 98 until 2013, he stayed at North Dakota State, moving up the chain. First as a positional coach, from tight ends to quarterbacks to running backs to passing game coordinator and quarterbacks coach in 08. Then from 09 to 2013, he's the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. 2014, he follows Craig Bohl to University of Wyoming, where he starts as the offensive coordinator and quarterback coach from 2014 to 2016. Then from 2017 to 2020, he's the OC QB coach and associate head coach. Then he leaves for Montana State. And since Brent Vegan's been at Montana State, they're 30-6 overall. But 6 is also kind of deceptive with those losses in 3 years. Montana Parlay, 2 of them are in the playoffs, one in a national championship, one in a national semifinal. 2 of them are FBS losses, one in 2022 to number 17 at the end of the year, Oregon State. In 2021, there's one to Wyoming. So there's 2 total FCS losses in Brent Vigen's 3-year stint. The worst team Montana State's lost to since he's been there was in 2021, number 7 Montana. Like Montana finished number 7 that season. That's the single worst FCS loss Montana State's endured since Brent Vigen is there. And like last year, Bobcats go 12-2, 8-0 in conference, share the conference title. They're a number 4 seed in the playoffs, make it to the national semifinal, lose to eventual champion South Dakota State 39-18. This year, the team's 6-1. I already referenced their only loss. They're 4-0 in Big Sky, beat number 6 Sacramento State 42-30 last week. But with that as the background, Montana Parlay, things are going pretty damn well in Bozeman. What Brent Vigen does offensively is one of the things that I think kind of stands out compared to not only almost any team in the Big Sky, but any team in the nation, particularly with the quarterbacks. You've been watching all the Montana State games, man. What stands out about what the Bobcats do offensively?
Well, it's run the damn ball. I mean, that's the thing. They have been building towards the goal of beating the best teams in the Valley, which was North Dakota State forever, and now it's South Dakota State. Each year we got closer and closer. Each year I'd get my hopes up. I was at 3 of those losses, by the way. The two latest South Dakota State ones, and then the game in Wyoming, which we should have won that game. But we're building up the offensive line to a point where we can play with the big boys in the trenches, which right now is South Dakota State, because everyone, that's where the difference is offensive, defensive line. That's where, we just look different in those few of those playoff games under Choate. And I think we've got there. And now with the stable of running backs we've got, we're so deep and it's just ridiculous. So I'm just waiting to see defensively where we are. I'm one of those guys who some might say I'm a little too negative sometimes on the Cats, although this year I'm feeling pretty good. But, each time I get my hopes up, then we, get our butts kicked by North Dakota State in the semifinal or the championship, or South Dakota State last year in the semifinal, although that was an ice rink. But this year I think we finally got there. And I'm just waiting to see what the defense will do. And that's where your team, I think, can challenge us a bit, because we have not played a true passing team this year. So I'm just waiting to see. That's one thing the thing I'm most uncertain about as the team as a whole. I'm very confident in the run game, the offense as a whole, our defensive line. But I don't know how we can protect against the pass, because we haven't played a solid passing team yet. South Dakota State didn't really throw the ball much. They had a weird play calling. They didn't execute till the fourth quarter. They did just enough to win it. Other than that, look at our schedule.
Well, South Dakota State is still reeling at the loss of Jason Eck. So, hey, give them time. They'll recover someday. But I want to talk. Hey, you hit a point that we are 100% going to circle back to, as in like, hey, what if Idaho's going to pull out a win? What has to happen? And obviously, like, hey, you hit a big one for us to talk about. But for our Idaho listeners who have not watched the Bobcats in that as much as you, to stress the run game, it's not possible to do that too much against Montana State. On the season, the Bobcats have rushed 159 times to 78 pass attempts, and that's in Big Sky play. And in Big Sky play, Montana State is rushing 330.5 yards per game on 8. But this is the one that's flooring, 8.3 yards per carry in conference. So they're running twice as much as they pass. Everyone knows this is what's going to happen. And the team's averaging 8.3 yards per game. Yeah, like you hit the schedule, but they beat the shit out of Sac State on the ground too. And part of how Montana State does that is, look, you hit the O-line kicks ass. And I don't mean to breeze over that, because that's what makes what Montana State does feasible. But Montana State has a dual quarterback system that it works as seamlessly as I've ever seen two quarterbacks work together, which is what we have. There's Tommy Mellott, who's the theoretical starter, and Sean Chambers. I think it works because Vigen calls different style plays typically for each player. So it's not like a huge system overhaul when one quarterback comes in. It's just that the team knows they're going to do things differently. Tommy Mellott is, to me, the more effective intermediate passer, more accurate intermediate passer. He is, though he does, some of his rushes certainly go up the middle. He's more of a danger around the outside because he's pretty damn fast and hard to take down. Sean Chambers, on the other hand, he's very strong and he's fast too, but the overwhelming majority of his runs are right up the gut. And look, teams know that's coming, and they can't really stop the dude. Through the air, Chambers, I think, hey, tell me if this is wrong, Parlay. I think Chambers probably has a better deep ball than Tommy Mellott, but he's also a little bit more of an erratic passer, but that's not the overwhelming majority of what Chambers does.
He definitely looks like a stronger arm. Not that Tommy doesn't have a strong arm, but Chambers can put a zip on it, from 40 plus.
Yeah, both of these guys as quarterbacks, if they were at a school that was not Montana State this year, I'd expect both of them would start virtually anywhere except for maybe what Idaho does with Giovanni McCoy, because I think McCoy is a better passer than both those guys, but they have other strengths. But hey, throw Tommy Mellott in Montana, he's probably starting. Throw him at Sacramento State, he's probably starting. Throw Sean Chambers at Northern Arizona, he's probably starting. Throw him in Eastern Washington or Idaho. Well, maybe not Idaho State because they pass it 700 times a game. But I think Sean Chambers could start at virtually any school as well, and they both play quite a bit, dude. So that's the kind of the beginning and end of what Montana State does. You hit the line, partially with Montana State because their O-line is so damn good. It barely feels like it's worth referencing who the running backs are. But hey, Julius Davis transferred from Wisconsin, looked great last week against Sacramento State. On the season, he's averaging 7.2 yards per carry with 3 touchdowns. Jared White is the leading running back as far as number of running back carries, 52 attempts on the season, averaging 9.1 yards per carry and 4 touchdowns. But the battering ram of this team is Sean Chambers, 11 touchdowns. He honestly, dude, watching Chambers, and I'm a lot too, watching Chambers, you can see, look, if Montana State gets it to 3rd and 4, that's essentially a layup for what the Bobcats have been doing this season, which is punish teams on the ground, but then, hey, they still throw it enough to keep teams honest.
Yeah. And, you can't say enough about the offensive line, and that's where it starts. One of my brothers, he's an honorary Grizz fan. I think he's a Grizz fan when it annoys me and my other brother who are Cat fans. But, he said today, we'll probably talk gambling a little later, but we were talking about the point spread and what we're going to bet on. But he said today, the Montana State offensive line is probably the best line in the Big Sky since 2005 Grizz, when they had that elite offensive line. That was 18 years ago. So I don't know if I don't follow all the other teams over the years, but, that's pretty good company to keep. And as far as, passing, I was kind of getting a little bit with some guys on Twitter saying we just need to run it against Sac, until they stop us. You got to pass it sometimes because you're not always going to face a team that you can run against. And if you don't throw it a little bit, you're going to be rusty when you come out and have to throw. Look at the second half against South Dakota State. Chambers' first throw was in the second half. It was an interception. So we need to throw it a little bit for 2 reasons. So we don't have any rust when we have to. And also it does a little bit of balance is good. Even though teams know we're running and we still run it for 6 yards a carry, sometimes you get stopped and, or obviously the big runs happen when the team is expecting a pass and vice versa. So, we do run it 70% of the time, but those 30% of the time where we're passing the ball are huge. Look at the championship run the Bobcat had. I'd say that was more about Tommy's passing the ball because everyone was stacked in the box expecting him to run, and he just threw it up to McCutcheon, and that's kind of what got sparked that playoff run. So passing is important for this run-heavy team.
Yeah, and look, they do both of those again, relatively speaking, well enough. If you look at individual stats offensively, Chambers has the most passing attempts, but he's played in more games because Tommy Mellott, he missed 3 games with injury. Chambers on the season, he's completing 55.7% of his passes, 733 yards, 6 touchdowns, 2 picks, averaging 104 yards per game. Mellott, when he's played 30-43, that's 69% for 382 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. So, hey, that's a total of 2 picks on the season thrown from Montana State. The team itself has picked off 9 passes. So look, we'll probably, this is something we're going to have to talk about with Idaho, but Idaho has not been great this season turnover wise. They're definitely negative in the turnover margin, minus playing Cal Poly. But hey, Cal Poly fixes that for everyone. Montana State's been effective at getting teams to turn the ball over. Maybe not quite at the level like we saw from Montana last week, 2 weeks ago against Idaho. But, hey, look at the game against Sacramento State. Idaho picks off Caden Bennett twice, and I believe they also recovered a fumble as well. So, look, that's a positive turnover margin. I know you talked about Chambers did throw a pick right out the gate in the second half, but Montana State's come out on the right side of the turnover margin. So before we shift over to like the Idaho end, Jake, we do need to, you hit on Montana State defensively. I think you're not wrong that Idaho is probably the biggest offensive challenge or defensive challenge the Bobcats are going to have of the season. But look, you can only play the schedule you have. And what Montana State's done in Big Sky play, they're the number 1 defense scoring wise. They've given up 71 points in 4 games for allowing under 18 points per game, which as a reference point, Northern Colorado averages 18 points on the season. So Montana State is allowing a Northern Colorado level scoring output each week in Big Sky play. Total yardage, Montana State is number 2 in the conference. They're allowing 314 yards per game, which as a barometer, that's a little better than an average Weber State week. So look, they've been sound on both sides of the ball. The Bobcats appear to be pretty healthy based off how the 2 deep works. They run a 4-2-5. They don't bring as much pressure as like University of Montana does or did against Idaho, but they're able to drop 7 back in coverage whenever they want. And like I hit the total stats we're talking about, man. They've been pretty good. Jake, in the games you've been watching from Montana State, what has stood out defensively?
Except they trust the line to apply pressure, and then the guys can cover. They can double guys. Like Hatton's probably going to get some double coverage. They're going to trust the line, and I like the line matchup big time. But McCoy is going to move around. I was trying to watch the Montana game, Idaho Montana game before this, and something happened with my DVR, so I only caught those last few minutes. And that the touchdown that could have tied it towards the end, I mean, that's one of those pressure or no pressure, good coverage or no, you just can't defend against that. When he rolls out and throws it, he's almost going out of bounds, and Hatton catches it in the back of the end zone. That's the stuff, you really can't game plan that well against. McCoy's going to slip away. He's going to roll out. He's going to make crazy throws, and whether or not they're caught, is going to be huge. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting because I really like our front 4 to apply pressure on their own. We don't need to throw too many blitzes out there.
Hey, to your credit real quick, Jake.
Yeah.
Montana State leads the Big Sky in sacks.
Yeah, exactly. So they don't need much. It's those linemen have really stepped up and taken care of business in the trenches. And I think you guys are, hurting a little bit, a little young, a little small on offensive line. So that is not going to be a good matchup. But sometimes when you're playing QBs like McCoy, sometimes he thrives on getting pushed out of the pocket. So sometimes what looks good for Montana State, having 4 guys get past their blockers every time will end up hurting Montana State on a broken play. So those broken plays and, pressures and how McCoy executes is going to be the key to the game to me. So, we'll see how our DBs can hold up.
So, hey, we're going to shift to Idaho end right after we hear from other sponsor, Hughes River Expedition. Martin, you're the home run hitter with 0 notice all the time. Okay. Dude, here's the thing about Hughes River Expedition. They're owned by Vandals. And if you have ever wanted to go on a river rafting trip, you ever want to see the middle fork of the Salmon River, the main Salmon River no return, the Salmon River Canyons, or the Selway, get a hold of Colin. The trips are all inclusive. So truly, just get your ass there and you're going to have a fantastic trip. Doesn't matter if you're a larger group doing this like a corporate or like, team building kind of retreat, or you're just a family and you want to have a trip on the rapids, see the outdoors, do something you're going to talk about for the rest of your life with your family. Well, hey, those work too. So just get a hold of Colin. Call him now at 800-262-1882 or check him out at hughesriver.com. Amateur hour. So Jake, the Idaho end, you talked about Giovanni McCoy. I want to shift back. I want to shift to the passing thing in a second, but I want to hit one thing that you probably missed just by not seeing some of the early Idaho game against Montana. One of the things that Idaho is going to have to do differently this week is the team was clearly not ready for the type of sellout environment at the Kibbie Dome and what it means to play a sellout in front of your own fans versus like what they did in Montana last year, where it's opposing fans. The team looked just a little bit out of sync in the first half. Some truly self-inflicted gunshot wounds in that first half that really hurt Idaho, never mind the other schematic stuff. Jason Eck talked about that in his press conference after the Montana game of Idaho's going to have to clean it up. And hey, Montana State, the thing that stands out to me from having watched Montana State against Sacramento State and what it means for Idaho is because of what Montana State does offensively and because they're good defensively, a team like Idaho, which is number 9 in the nation, they're not going to be able to come out on the negative side turnover wise against Montana State. Montana State scores too well, and they can do exactly what Idaho likes to do with that run game, which is put the other offense on ice, get a lead, and make the other team have to be incredibly efficient offensively. That is the concern from the Idaho end. If we start out sluggish, I think the loss from Montana might have been good as far as getting the team a little more in tune effort wise. But like you referenced Giovanni McCoy needing to have a good, Giovanni McCoy is a very good quarterback. We're stoked to have him as a starter. You referenced something that he's going to have to do, which is I guarantee because Idaho as offensive line unit has been better against the run than pass protection. And Idaho's going to get in points where they need McCoy to make plays and they need the receivers to come down the ball. Like you said, McCoy's going to have to be able to make something out of nothing a bit against a Montana State team that can get you with 4 guys, kind of like he did against Montana in a different way. So the only issue that I'm going to say is different this week, Jake, than against Montana is, look, McCoy played very well overall, but hey, he had 3 turnovers. Idaho's not going to be able to have 3 turnovers out of the quarterback position and come away with a win. What else from the Idaho end, I guess, has you anxious at all from the Montana State end? As in, like, hey, we already referenced Idaho's probably the best offense Montana State's playing. If Montana State doesn't come out on top or it stays a close game, what would you expect is probably what happens for Idaho?
It's that you start strong. I mean, you're not going to beat Montana State with 7 points in the first half like you had against the Grizz. And I think, like you referenced, the wake-up call, like they weren't ready to meet the moment against the Grizz with a sellout at home against a surging Grizz team that's been improving the last 4 weeks since they made the switch at QB, which
hashtag Craig Haley. Thanks, man.
Yeah. So I mean, it's one thing to switch I don't want to talk about the Grizz too much. It's one thing to switch quarterbacks, but that line to actually switch from not blocking to blocking, although having a mobile QB, obviously, as you know, makes a huge difference with an average or less offensive line. what gets me is like they will be more ready to meet the moment. They learn their lesson versus the Grizz. So it's not like we're going to surprise them in the first half like the Grizz did. Idaho knows who Montana State is. Maybe they might have underestimated the Grizz a little bit. They beat them last year in Missoula. Grizz lost to Northern Arizona. They might have been a little cocky. They might have been like, it's our house. We're going to come out and whip them because we beat them in Missoula. They know ahead of time, Montana State, who they are and how they have to play. So they're not going to be surprised in the first half.
Well, to be fair with the Montana thing, Montana looked like shit for the first half of the season. Montana State, that's not the case. Like if you're paying attention to football and you do not understand Montana State is for real, you should probably just quit watching football. The Bobcats, again, their only losses to the number one team in the nation on the road by 4 in a game that I expect you think Montana State should have come away with that.
Yeah.
So from the Idaho end, like here is what I think is a bit of a riddle that Jason Eck is going to have to untangle. Against Montana, Idaho was most effective moving the ball when they went tempo. Sacramento State, to me also against Montana State, was most effective moving the ball when they could go tempo and not deal with the self-inflicted gunshot wounds of false start penalties and stuff like that did hurt Sacramento State. The reason I say it's a riddle, Jason Eck hasn't made it a secret. What he likes to do offensively is sit on that play clock till it gets under 5 every single play. The recipe for Idaho is to get a lead and force the other teams to be incredibly efficient offensively. And if they can't do it, you're not going to hang with Idaho. The difference being Montana State they also have the type of offense that you want to keep off the field. Idaho's had some tackling issues certainly at times throughout this season that, hey, what's Idaho going to have to do differently in this game, to keep it close, pull away a win? Idaho can't deal with the lapses in tackling like we saw against Montana and Eastern Washington. Montana State's a different beast than those teams. But for Idaho to keep that Montana State offense on ice, well, that's where the slower pace comes in. But Idaho also might run into, I wouldn't be shocked at all if Idaho saw the game film from Sacramento State, Montana State, and thinks, okay, well, this is something we can do against a team as strong up front as Montana State is. Try to give him less time to get settled, and it was effective against Montana. Hey, this was hit in a comment section from Capdan58. I'm frantically scrolling up Capdan to get to where you said this, but Hayden Hatton believes, when it becomes kind of schoolyard football, he's going to win every time. I 100% buy that, but I also think, hey, moving tempo might be a better way to get Hatton those kind of matchups, to get Jermaine Jackson, another first team Big Sky receiver, those kind of matchups, to get Therese Trainer parlay. So Idaho has their top 3 receivers are all former All Big Sky receivers, already hit the first 2, were first team last year, but then number 3, Therese Trainer, was third team in 2021. Those guys would, thrive at tempo, but Jason Eck was also open that he didn't really like the play calling split of the Montana game where Idaho passed significantly more than they ran. Idaho typically likes to do about a 45 pass to 55% rush split. So I guess I don't know how Jason Eck is going to best untangle that against, to me, what, Montana State is as close to Cal as any team Idaho's played this year. Cal being the team Idaho lost to in the OC.
Yeah. Yeah. As far as, size of the line in some of the skill positions. And, it'll be interesting. This game, who gets the ball first will mean something and how they set the tone, because the Vandal, both teams, I think the first drive will probably try to have a methodical drive to eat up the clock, get at the very least, switch the field position. Obviously they're trying to score, but back to some mention of the Bobcats working on passing is Vegan knows what teams he's playing and he adjusts accordingly. Like he knows we're dominant in the trenches in this game. He's not going to pass it until he absolutely has to, or when you least expect it. He's just going to try to get 4 yards of carry. He's not scared of 3rd and 4, because if you get the 3rd and 4, it's like an 85-90% chance of getting it, especially if you're near midfield and you're going on 4th as well. So, I don't see the Bobcats passing it on first or second down until maybe they get a 10 or more point lead and they try to take them by surprise, but Idaho, yeah, it's going to be interesting. He's going to throw in some trick plays, some trickeration.
He can't stop himself. Even last week, going for the trick play on that 2-point conversion, which in the presser, he defended it, saying, look, in the presser, he talked about how not going for the field goal early it turned out to be a mistake. But at the time, he thought Idaho's going to have to score over 30 to win the game, and they weren't going to get there on field goals. He acknowledged that maybe he should have done that differently. No, he doubled down on that play call. He absolutely feels it was the right call, feels that Hatton just slipped. So no, you're right. He's going to. It's part of who he is. It's part of who his OC Luke Schleissner is. They can't help it. That's part of why we like them. But also, dude, against Montana, when I saw that, I was freaking out.
Yeah. So when, it's the timing of the Montana State pass plays, the Idaho, how they manage, up tempo versus the methodical drives and their trick plays, and who executes. I mean, if it's close at the end, anything can happen because, you've got the home field advantage, you've got McCoy. So it's about you guys keeping it close within 8 points, or that's when I, as a Bobcat fan, start to get nervous because I don't care how much better we are in the trenches, how much better we are at every position except possibly quarterback and then receiver. If this game is 10 points or less in the late in the third going into the fourth, all bets are off, so to speak. It's just too many variables with college kids, and you guys got too much talent at the skill positions to where I'd feel comfortable, with a close game late in the game.
Yeah, and look, you hit skill positions. You have to expect one of the goals for Idaho is to get Anthony Woods more rushes than he had against Montana. Rushed 12 times for 41 total yards against Montana, but on the Big Sky Conference season, which those are the stats I'm leaning into, Anthony Woods leads the league in rushing, 69 attempts for 109.5 yards per game, 8 touchdowns, average 6.3 yards per carry. Now, again, I just have to hit this. These are flooring numbers to look at. I just went over Anthony Woods is leading the league in rushing, having a kick-ass season. Yeah, dude, number 2 in Big Sky play is Julius Davis, averaging 8.3 yards per carry. And my God, Sean Chambers, 6 rushing touchdowns in Big Sky play on 11.8 yards per rush, and the overwhelming majority of his rushes are up the middle. It's the numbers out of Montana State are it's honestly breathtaking, dude. Because look, if you look at the Idaho end, Idaho's a very solid rushing team. Big Sky play, they're number 3, 188.8 yards per game, 4.7 yards per carry. That's just over half of what MSU averages. So I think for sure Idaho's going to work to get Anthony Woods involved more because Eck already referenced that a ton, that he didn't like the play calling split they had to go to against Montana because of the early deficit. And full disclosure, if Idaho gets behind like that against Montana State, Brent Vegan isn't going to do Bobby Ball and do his best to let Idaho come back. If Idaho gets down, they're just going to be down. I think this game, for Idaho to win this game, it's going to need to be close, and it's going to probably have to be close wire to wire, because I just don't think this Montana State team has it in them to lose by 2.5 scores to anyone. I mean, we just talked about how they were against number 1 South Dakota State. So if Idaho's going to come out on top, it's going to have to be close wire to wire. Idaho's going to have to force turnovers in a way they just have not done, especially in the Big Sky Conference season, while simultaneously preventing Montana State from forcing turnovers, like the Bobcats have really had no trouble with doing this year against a lot of the teams we referenced. A lot of teams they beat up on sucked, but hey, they forced the turnovers. Idaho just hasn't been doing that this season. And then my hope is that you're right. It's a close enough game. We get in that fourth quarter, and then look, we're talking less about the matchups and more about execution under pressure. and that the Vandals learned their lesson from Montana and are ready to pick up a win. Because from the Montana State end, I think they're pretty damn safe as far as like the second half of their schedule is tougher, but I think I'm not worried about Montana State not getting a bye in the playoffs. And I guess I failed by burying the lead, Jake. If Idaho wins this game becomes a de facto version of a Big Sky Conference championship game. As in, if Idaho give Montana State the one conference loss, then we're looking at potentially a couple teams sharing the title at the end. And if Idaho picks up a win, we're talking Idaho getting a first round bye is absolutely on the table. Montana State wins, they're undefeated. Then their final, Big Sky Conference championship game will essentially be Cat Grizz if Montana can get there without another conference loss. So that's the stakes for Idaho is keeping a chance to share of a conference title, and this game is going to be huge for seeding purposes for the playoffs. As for you, Jake, what do you view the stakes as for Montana State?
It's all about, at this point, greedy Bobcat fans now, and I'm one of them, is not only making it to the Natty, but competing in the Natty and winning. And to do that, you need home field throughout the playoffs. I was at that game in Brookings last year. It was 40 below with wind chill. It felt like it anyway, because of Prairie cold is different than Montana cold. It just is. It was horrible. I mean, I was comfortable. I was in more layers than you can imagine, but I don't see how anyone on the sidelines could even think straight. And the field was an ice rink. So playing the best teams at home in the semifinal, we beat them the year before that in Bozeman when X left. I mean, thankfully, Eck left at halftime at that game and didn't, I don't know, he had someone else call the plays in the second half for South Dakota State, because that was interesting.
We're okay with that too.
Yeah, that's all right. He had moved on to Idaho already. But home field advantage throughout the playoffs is so huge. Once you get to a certain point where it's championship, I don't want to say it's championship or bust, but having that home semifinal game it's so important. And we can't get that most likely if we drop any game. And this is our toughest game left. Grizz fans might hate on me, but this is our toughest game left. I mean, I guess at Grizz, but I'm looking at the matchups like as they stand right now. I think this is our toughest game. Someone mentioned the spread. I don't know if we want to break down gambling at a different point.
You're here, man. Do it.
All right. So we're on Sports Bet Montana.
I apologize. I got to pause you. Mike Colt's in the comment section saying he's backing up what you're talking about Prairie Cold, saying the 2010 D2 National Semi, Minnesota Duluth hosted, -15 actual temp, coldest I've ever been. Just to echo your point, dude. Look, it's cold in the Northwest, Prairie cold. It's a different level of unforgiving.
Big thing about home games for the Bobcats late in the season or in the playoffs is we are on the sun side, and that second half, the other team freezes their asses off because they're in the dark, so to speak. And so when I was in Brookings, I'm like, oh, we're on the sun side. They're on the shade side. Why do they do this? This is such an advantage. Turns out we're on the wind side. They were on the blocked by the wind, and that cold, oh my God, it was horrible. Anyway, that's enough about that damn game. So the spread for this weekend, Sports Bet Montana is ridiculous. If Montana people here, Vandals and Cats, and maybe the occasional Grizz fan who's tuning in here, they post lines the earliest of any legitimate legal stateside sport book. They usually put Bobcat and Grizz lines up on Wednesdays at the latest, and you can go bet anywhere in Montana where there's a kiosk right now on this game. Montana State is favored by 7.5. Okay. If you follow my brother and I on Twitter, I'm at Montana Parlay. This brother is Big Sky Oh My. He guessed 6.5. I think he just wanted to bet the Bobcats if it was 6.5. I guessed 9.5. Come at me if you want. Statistical models say it's supposed to be, 13 or 14. But again, that doesn't always account for a lot of the X factors and the strengths of schedule, which you guys have had a much harder one. The point total is 63.5. I think that's a stay away from me. I lean by, I like the Bobcats to win and cover, but I don't feel super great about it. You guys have at least a 35% chance of winning. The money line's plus 235 on Idaho. So if you bet $100, you get $235 in profit. So you Idaho guys, you feel really confident, cross the border over to Montana, go place some money line bets right now. You can get almost 2.5 to 1 on your money. So I, think I like Montana State, but those backdoor covers or McCoy just doing his thing and winning outright is totally on the table. So far this year in the Big Sky, Idaho is the best against the spread. Sometimes that's slightly due to a tougher schedule because they're not always favored or you have tighter lines, whereas the Bobcat, and they're 6-1, 5-1-1, depending on what lines you were looking at, or 6-1. That's an amazing record against the spread, and that's the Idaho Vandals this year in the Big Sky.
Hey, can I pause real quick on strength of schedule thing, just as a reference point? You're right about strength of schedule. So, based off Massey rankings, Montana State has the number 8 schedule in the Big Sky, number 19 in the nation. Idaho has the number 3 schedule in the Big Sky, number 8 in the nation.
And the Bobcats are 4-3 against the spread. One of those losses against the spread was Cal Poly. They were favored by 40.5, and they won by 40. So it's like, okay, they're a little worse against the spread, but that's what we were dealing with, were some of these 38 to 44 point spreads against crappy teams like Stetson and Utah Tech and Cal Poly. And coaches aren't thinking about winning by 40 or more. They're like, if we're up by 28, let's do some things. Let's get some subs in. So, that's kind of where the gambling is. And that, if I'm not bringing up players and stats, I'm here to win money, bet on football, and watch the game. I'm not here trying to be the best at statistics. So that's my Kenny Powers line for my Big Sky take. But
well, no, dude, I listened to
you.
I listened to you on the Mint, man. Bankroll management.
Yeah. So okay, that I heard, actually. Yeah, I do listen to the Grizz Fan Pod a few times. And this week, Luke was joking about me betting more than my salary. I'd like to be that big of a crazy person, but I'm not. I don't bet that much. I should be betting more. If you watch 1AA parlays, I'm 16-7 so far after a 1-2 week. So I was 15-5. I should be betting more with my record against the FCS the last 10 years. Bankroll management, if you got $1,000 at play, you should be betting $50 to $100 per bet. Okay. So if you only want to play with $100 in gambling each year, you should only betting $5 to $10 per game. That's what bankroll management is. And it's when we double down on Northern Colorado against Cal Poly, like I may or may not have done last week. How the hell does Northern Colorado score 17 against the worst team in the Big Sky and 21 against Washington State? I don't know.
I can tell you that when we get to picking the Big Sky in a second. But hey, not trying to kill the soliloquy. We got to get to score predictions. Oh, yeah. So, Martin, you've been on the shelf, and we'll hit the comment score predictions in a second, dude. Just throw them in there. We see them starting to roll in. Before we get there, hey, Walk On Apparel, guys, they're making some kick-ass Big Sky gear, in particular Idaho gear, because Vandals and Tubbs listeners have been such loyal supporters of Walk On. We have a special Tubbs at the Club coupon for you guys. Enter in coupon code Tubbs in all capitals, capital TUBS for 15% off at checkout. 10% of all purchases also go to the University of Idaho Athletic Department. Score prediction, Martin.
I gotta be sunshine and rainbows here. I can't not pick Idaho. I'm sticking with I believe what I picked as I picked them to lose one game this year against in home, and it was Sacramento State. I was wrong. I'm picking them to win against Montana State 26-23.
Okay, Martin saying 26-23. Montana parlay.
Whew, those are some nice shirts. All right, I'm going to go Montana State 36, Idaho 27.
Yeah, in the comment section, Jason Mayer saying Idaho 45, MSU 38. I would love that game. Tom Kendall saying Idaho 31, MSU 28. I know we had some other score predictions, but then the talk of the Prairie Cold buried a few of them. But okay, man, dude, this is the toughest one for me to pick. So Patty Ferks, 42-35 Idaho. Turner Webb, 38-35 Idaho. Okay, here's my concern. I feel that like Idaho showed up flat and like against Montana, and also like one of the things Bobby Hauck does is he is very good at getting his team to kind of mobilize it, like us against the world mentality, pretend they're victims and shit like that, but it works. I don't think that's part of the Brent Vigen math. I think Brent Vigen is more calculated in how he views his team, and they just kick ass at all facets, which is that is concerning itself. But I'm not concerned about Idaho not being present for the moment, like they were not against Montana for a good chunk of that game. But that said, God damn it, Montana State's good. Hopefully their kicker gets another week because he looks like a catastrophe. I'm going to go Montana State 35-31. And with that, we need to. Oh, then McLean Westbrook saying Idaho State 41, Sac 38. Oh, wrong game. Oh, dude, McLean. We're going to get there in a second. We're picking the rest of Big Sky. And hey, for rotating Big Sky picks, guys, I'll do Martin, then Montana parlay. I will give my score last. So other games we're looking at this week. We have. Well, hey, Jake, I'm sorry I stopped you talking Northern Colorado, but we're right back there. The game you were wanting to talk about the most. Northern Colorado travels to Missoula. Northern Colorado, fresh off, as you referenced, scoring 17 points against the stalwart Mustangs of Cal Poly. Martin, who you got?
This should be no surprise as to who everybody thinks I'm picking this week. I think Northern Colorado gets their first win of the season.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Montana parlay. You're gonna just have your roll right after Martin whenever you want to. But hey, you're next.
Okay. I think Northern Colorado will cover this 22.5 point spread. That's on the sports book, but the Grizz win.
Yeah. So here is the riddle Northern Colorado has to unravel for themselves. They average 18 points a game in Big Sky play. That counts playing Cal Poly. The only team worse is Weber State. And I say that's a riddle because the best defensive team in the league right now is Montana State, giving up 17.8 points per game. So what does Northern Colorado lean on to win? Nothing. They scored 17 against Cal Poly. They have no route to win for the rest of the season. That's it. They're done. Like Ed Lamb is a good coach who has a lot of work to do, obviously going Montana here. Eastern Washington traveling to top 5 Portland State to play in the top 5 Hillsborough Stadium. Martin.
Portland State keeps the damn cup.
Jesus Christ.
I think Portland State had a trap game last week against Idaho State. They're too busy making sweet videos for social media and counting on beating Eastern, so they do beat Eastern.
So I made the mistake of watching some of Idaho State, Portland State last week. In my defense, I was running errands, which also means I was obviously watching in my car. So that's a second mistake. But Portland State had some pretty serious injury issues against Idaho State. Like their top 2 running backs were out, and running quarterback Dante Sacheret was hurt too. I bring that up because there's such spectacular reporting coverage out of Portland State. Until we know they're healthy, I'm assuming they're not. And I think Eastern Washington is look, they face plant. If they don't face plant away that Idaho State lead, which they easily could have avoided by just running the play clock down, I think we view Eastern a little bit differently. So I'm going to go Eastern Washington. They're healthy at quarterback, and they have options there now for running as well. Hey, some dude named J. Ted says Grizz and Noco with the Big Ten score. You familiar with that, J. Ted, Montana parlay?
Yeah, I might know him.
I had a theory. Okay, so I'm gonna go Eastern Washington. After that, we have. Okay, this is kind of the goddamn and not one of the anomalies that picking that I've been struggling with the Northern Arizona game, which I dread picking every week now. UC Davis at Northern Arizona, Martin.
Northern Arizona.
Yeah, when you pick games straight up, it's almost want to make fun of you guys rather than against the spread. But this game and the Eastern game are basically pick-ems, so it's tough to pick them. And Davis has looked so bad lately. Where's a coin? Davis.
But then also, look, in the last time we saw Northern Arizona State, by the way, at home, that was a couple weeks ago because they were on bye last week. Yeah. Northern Arizona was murdered by top 5 Portland State 45-21. So, look, I'm going to go with Davis because I agree. Davis is the word that I would describe that team this season is underwhelming. But I think they're just okay. That's it. I think we all got a little bit too excited about Northern Arizona. They have like 2 wins. Like they're still this far into the season. Their record is well under 500. Davis at least has collected wins. I'm going to go UC Davis. Also, I know no news about Land Larison that I know of, but Trent Tompkins will be playing, so they shouldn't be without their top 2 running backs. The game that McLean wanted us to talk about early, Martin, Idaho State at Sacramento State.
Look, McLean, I love that we have Idaho State fans. I love that we have an Idaho State podcast, but Sac State's going to win this big.
I think the jungle wins the Twitter battles, but ultimately Sac wins the game.
Yeah, I think that's safe. And here's the issue I think Idaho State's going to run into is they're okay on the ground defensively, but they're not particularly good. I think Sacramento State's going to recover. The other issue for Idaho State, I mean, Sacramento State, their only losses are to Idaho and Montana State, and they were competitive in both those games. This is still a very good team. Idaho State is, as a different Montana Mint host might have said back in the day, a Montana parlay, Idaho State is frisky, but I think Sacramento State is still good. They're a playoff level team. I think Sacramento State's going to do just fine. Although if you guys haven't watched Idaho State, they are a fun team. They're to me one of the success stories of the Big Sky. The way Cody Hawkins has revitalized that program, the way Jordan Cook has a goddamn arm. Seriously, if you haven't watched Idaho State this year, give them at least a quarter. But I'm picking Sacramento State. And look, we already talked about the Montana State Idaho game. Parlay, before you go, we do have to hit you with one thing we purposely give you no notice of. Every time we have a new co-host on, we hit them with a reversal, which is you get a chance to ask us anything you want, whether it's Idaho related, sports related, not sports related, why in God's name we were even here in the first place, why I have a duster over my shoulder. I don't really care. But hey, the floor is yours. It's any topic you want to run with.
I figured the duster has to do with your OnlyFans account. And
hashtag Patreon.com/Dubs-the-Club.
I almost made the whole hour-long pod without even thinking about our kicker. So F you for bringing that up, because that, besides McCoy doing his thing with Hatton, our kicker could be what allows you guys to win the game, or at least stay close enough to pull it off in the end. All right, so many questions I could come up with. First one, just because I watched the end of that Grizz game. Who the hell was sticking the thunder sticks up in front of the camera? And why didn't someone tackle them halfway through the broadcast?
Oh, man. So I actually called Brent Wahlberg last weekend just because I saw a tweet he made joking about Idaho fans. And like, I'm going to bring this up because this is my experience as an Idaho fan. I became a Vandal in 2005, like one of the shittiest times I ever become a Vandal. And at that time, basketball and football was in just a death match of who could be the shittiest. And football has recovered the last 2 years with a couple, an Oasis season or two sprinkled in over the last 20 years. Basketball had a couple like 500-ish seasons, but like we just lived through the Zach Kloss era, hashtag right track. So the reason I bring that up, Idaho fans for 20 years have been taught in the two major sports, you don't have to show up. So like you do that for more than a generation. People don't know what in God's name they're doing. So like the students, they still have to learn to not like cheer when Idaho has the ball. The band has to figure out, hey, if Idaho's going for a 2-point conversion, stop playing the damn fight song. Get to that later. That's part of the Idaho growth curve we're going through. So, no, like you're not wrong. Idaho fans are back-to-back sellouts. We're putting things together. But look, I remember the Boise State game. This is back in like 08, I think. Martin, I'd have to look it up. But it was the first Boise State game of the Don Verlin era. That's basketball, Montana Parlay. Idaho in the first season under Don Verlin back then, they went from a dumpster fire forever to they were around 500, which felt like undefeated. That first Boise State game I went to, essentially a sellout. The fans had no idea what to do. There would be like 5 different cheers from 6 different sections at the exact same time. Like when teams don't win, people do forget how to do this stuff. So what you saw, hey, growth curve from the fans, just like we talked about from the players needing to meet the moment. Well, that doesn't mean the fans all know in God's name what they're doing. I expect it'll be a little more coordinated this time, but yeah, you are like, if your basic point is like Idaho fans, like what are you doing? No, you're right. Some of them don't know. That's just where we're at.
And you're right. When you suck for a long time, trust me, I was part of that whole run of Bobcats couldn't win the brawl if their life depended on it for however many freaking years. And I went to games where we just showed up with our student IDs and walked through the gates into a half empty, shitty stadium before they did all the remodeling. So as much crap as I give people for, attendance numbers online, it takes a while to get to where you guys have got the last 2 games. And then it's new. You don't know how to act, you don't know how to act, and you'll figure it out. You guys, the program is, I kind of miss the downtrodden Tubbs guys, Brian, when we first started the Mint, the sad sacks. I don't know if I'll like you guys as winners. You are winners now, but you lost to Southeastern Louisiana in the playoffs. So, you're winners, but you still need to prove some things. And once you do, I don't know if I'll still like you as much. So I'm a little nervous about that. But I do wish you guys the best going forward, except for this weekend and at the game.
I'm glad. That means there's someone who enjoyed the Paul Petrino era. So, look, Martin, you want to give your answer to the basic question of what in God's name was going on?
You answered it perfectly. That's all I can pretty much say.
And I'm okay.
And just
to
I get
the
like the band thing, I think is just a natural. I'm not speaking for Spencer Martin. I don't know. I haven't talked to him like seriously in like 5-6 years. Like I think that is just a natural like habit of, okay, it's a touchdown PAT. They just play, and I think he learns pretty quickly, and I hope he'll learn from that mistake.
Yeah, which that hey, like you're hitting on the point is like, hey, there's some learning curve stuff. It worked out. I do want to make sure to hit maybe the MVP of the comment section, McLean Westbrook. Attendance is tough. We can't all have a packed state-of-the-art stadium like Portland State. Like, hey,
yeah,
you're right.
State-of-the-art middle school stadium.
Yeah, and then Jason Mayer, hashtag run, incomplete pass, hashtag CPP. Yeah. Yeah, so Jake, you missed the hashtag Coach Paul Petrino days. Again, glad that makes
hashtag PP era.
Yeah.
If we wanted to go another hour, my dad played for Petrino Senior at Carroll College, and I've got some stories. So I don't know, maybe another time.
Yeah, dude. Okay. Before we close out, the one ad that we suck at bringing up all the time is the one for ourselves. So support the show at patreon.com/Tubbs at the Club. Become part of our hashtag Only Tubbs Discord, which has absolutely exploded this year. It's fun as hell. Makes the one, especially for road games, it's essentially going wild wire to wire during those games. Which then makes it sweet because you have more Vandals that you connect with online. You can then meet in person at the home games. And it's still pretty dang active during the home games, because if you're not in the dome dealing with shitty reception, Well, you're not in the dome. So, hey, it's still going. So I think that's probably the best part of the whole Patreon experience that we have. So patreon.com/Tubs of the Club. Jake, we probably need to have you on our off season to get, if we're ever feeling down, like, hey, let's say Idaho loses a playoff game, which, you know, hey, all but one team in the FCS that makes the playoffs will eventually lose a playoff game. Maybe we get you on to talk us up with stories of hell that your dad had to deal with. So we still have that. But hey, before you go, anything else you want to bring up? Anything else you want to give a quick shout out to before we call tonight?
You know, tune into 1AA Parlays, the FCS Fans Nation on YouTube. God, I wish I was going to be in Idaho this week. I really looked into it. It's my busy season for work, so I just couldn't really pull it off. Plus, how the hell do you even get there? You know, where do you fly into? How do you drive there? I don't know. It's not the easiest.
The answer is you fly to Seattle, and then there's a direct flight from Seattle to Pullman.
Ah, okay.
Or you fly to Spokane,
sure,
and
that's
a 90-minute drive.
Yeah, I'm sure that's very affordable and all that. But I do wish I was in the dome this weekend. Sometime I will make it out there. We'll have some, you know, I'll bring a bottle of Malort and we'll have a good time. So, you know, I made you drink that when you visited here, didn't I?
You did. Yeah, dude. Yeah,
right.
you did. I visited Jake in Chicago. He made me have Malort. I gladly accepted.
Yeah, he was one of the better ones at it. Yep.
I mean, I'm not going to call it Snake River Stampede, but I try
again. Not. You're going to lose them. They'll never want to pay you a nickel going forward if you compare them to Malort. So, yeah, you know, have fun out there. You know, Bobcat fans do travel well. I love traveling with them. It's FCS football. One of the greatest things is going on road trips with the fans that travel. It's just an amazing experience. So I'm going to miss that. I'll be watching on TV. It's going to be a good one.
Speaking of which, Captain 58 in the comment section, y'all going to miss me on the Discord Saturday. I'm going to be in the building, the eighth wonder of the world. I was terrified he was about to say Holt Arena after that. That giant beer can with a football field, the P1 FCU Kibby Dome. So, hey, dudes, Captain 58 is going to be there. Hey, Captain, I'm going to be there, so I'm going to salt you on Twitter to find you. But, hey, guys, if any of you guys are actually at the game, message us. Love running into people that we meet through doing the show. Please do not hesitate. This has actually been one of the most fun parts about doing the show. Kevin Marshall says the fans that travel are way different than the home ones. 100% agree, Kevin. Thanks for joining on the show for the live stream. Tom Kendall saying cheaper to stay in Paris than Moscow this weekend. Jake, we didn't even tell you about how like every Idaho game is also a WSU home game, which makes it a nightmare to get any sort of lodging. Robert Martin, this is how fans from different teams should act. Best of luck, Idaho. Everyone have fun. Hey, you too, Martin. Robert Martin, I just hope you go home with an L. Look, dudes, thanks everyone for joining. Thank you, Jake, for stepping in short notice. Thank you, Martin, for producing. I can't say the other thing you do anymore. With that said, Martin's going to play us out with whatever goddamn video he wants. See you guys Saturday. Go Vandals.
Go Cats.
God damn it. I knew it.
And go Northern Colorado.